Welcome again. So today we're going to talk about something important in the C programming language, which is variables. And in fact, this topic is not only limited to the C programming language. In fact, every programming language you will study will have something called variables. So what is a variable? Basically, a variable is some container that will hold data for you. So it could be some container that holds numbers. It could be some container that holds text, characters. It could be some container that holds a bunch of other containers. So it can hold anything, and you're the one who define what the container holds. So if you'd like, for example, to define a container that holds numbers, then there are a couple of keywords that you have to use that will create that container for you. If you wanted to hold text, there are other keywords and so on. So in C, if you'd like to declare a variable, make a variable exist in your program, all you have to do is first you have to put in the type of the variable, and then the name, and then the semicolon. For example, if you'd like to create a number, we have to type in int. Int stands for integer. Integer is a type. And then the name of the variable, so I'm going to call it my var, and then a semicolon, because this is considered as an instruction. You're declaring a variable to the program. And we said that every instruction has to end with a semicolon. That's why the semicolon is in there. So this basically will create a variable that will contain numbers. But what number does it contain right now? Well, we don't know. Okay, it contains a random number. The number that it contains is some random number picked from memory, from the RAM. Okay, so we don't care what the number here is. If you'd like to put in a number into our variable, we have to add another instruction. So these lines of code here are called instructions. So when I say an instruction, I'm referring to something that ends with a semicolon. So if we'd like to put in a number, you have to type in the name of your variable. So it's my var. And as you can see, code blocks here is helping me. So it suggests the variables for me, which is pretty cool. And then you type in the equal sign and then the content, so say 45 for example, and then a semicolon. And as we said, the spaces here, the invisible characters are ignored, so both of these are equivalent. So the two lines here will create a variable of type integer, and then will initialize its value, will put 45 into that container, into my var. So if we hit run, nothing happens except that the program knows that there is something there called my var, and that my var has 45. So the notion of variable is just exactly similar to the notion of variable in mathematics. In mathematics, we say let x be a variable or something. X could be, I don't know, like 4, 5, 45, whatever. So x is something, some name that holds a value. It could hold a number. It could hold a real number, meaning a number with a fraction. It could hold like square root of 4 or whatever, square root of 2 or whatever. The same idea happens here. My var is some name, some container that holds data. It could hold a number, it could hold a text, it could hold anything. So if we'd like, for example, to print that my var there, we are gonna use the printf method that we used earlier. So I'm gonna remove everything from the printf, and inside its parentheses, we said that the first parameter here will get, like, I don't know, my var has the value, and then %i, and then we have a comma there, and then my var. So previously we used to put in numbers here like 65, but here notice that I'm using the name of the variable that I've created. So I'm putting in my var. So the program will print my var, the text my var has the value, and then it will try to print the first number that comes after the comma. And the first number happens to be a variable. So the program will print the content of that variable. It will not print the text my var, because this is not a text, this is a variable. So we will print the 45. And let's hit run, and as you can see, my var has the value 45. Cool, right? Now let's try to declare another variable. So I'm going to create another variable of type integer. It's just a number that could be positive or negative. It's not real. A number without, it could not, for example, be like 4.5 or 3.3 or whatever. It's just natural numbers. Okay, so my var 2. So this is another variable. And I'm going to put in my var 2 will has the value 6. Okay. Notice that the naming of the variables, well, the variables you can name whatever you want. Okay, you can choose however you want as a name for your variable. But your variable cannot have an empty, or let's say an invisible character. For example, you cannot call a variable with space. You cannot like call it my var like this. Okay, it has to be linked. It has to be, there must be no spaces in there, no invisible characters. It must be like this, just alphanumeric. And the variable name cannot start with a number. Like you cannot call your variable 6 my var like this. And as you can see, CodeBlocks has just changed the color. Okay, so that is not acceptable. Okay, your var could contain a number in the middle of the name, the end of the name, but at the beginning, no. The first character must be a character, must be a letter. And also, capital letters and non-capital letters are different. So my var like this or my var like this with a capital R are two different variables. They are not similar. Okay, so I can, for example, declare another variable called my var with a capital R, and when I compile, there's no error. So the program has accepted that. The program considers that these two variables are different. If I try to redeclare the same variable multiple times, as you can see, there's an error there. So if I try to compile, there's that red sign, there's something wrong with that instruction. And if I get down here, okay, if I click that little R red square there, you can see it tells me that at line 7 there's an error. It says redeclaration of my var with no linkage. Well, we don't care about that with no linkage there. All we care about is the redeclaration of my var. It tells you that you have declared my var and you are redeclaring that. So that's an error. You get to declare a variable only once. You cannot declare a variable more than one time. Okay, so let's get back to my var 2. My var 2 equals 2, for example. Now here I declared two variables. And what I wanted to demonstrate here, the arithmetic operations that we can do on variables. So for example, you can create a third variable, so my var 3, and you can put in my var 3, You can say that it will contain, that equal means it will contain what? It will contain, say, 4 plus 5. You can do that. So it'll take the constant 4 plus the constant 5, and then it'll put that into my var3. And if I try to print my var3, it says my var has the value 9. That's my var3. It has 9. 4 plus 5 equals 9. Now I can change, instead of putting in these constant values, I can replace each of them with a variable. So like my var2 there. So my var2 has 2, so 2 plus 4 should print out 6. Now if I print my var3 again, that's 6. I can change the other one. It could be my var. So my var3 will take the value of my var plus my var2. And when I hit compile, it's 47. So that's 45 plus 2. Cool. So that's the notion of adding variables. You can basically add variables. You can subtract variables. So we're gonna get my var3 equals my var minus my var2. So my var3 will equal 45 minus 2, so that's 43. So if I hit compile, that's 43. So we can use this operator, this minus operator. You can use this this star, which stands for multiplication. So we take my var, we multiply that by my var2, and then we put the results into my var3, and let's print that, and that's 90. So 45 times 2, that's 90. And finally, we can use another operator, which is this slash operator, which is the division, the Euclidean division. So if I hit run, it'll try to divide 45 by 2, and the result is 22. Notice it is printing 22 and not 22.5, because basically if we have two integers and we try to divide an integer by an integer, the result will be an integer. So it will ignore the rest. Okay, so there's the like, I don't know, like 45 equals 2 times 22 plus 1. So that 22 is the result and 1 is the rest. So if we have two integers, that rest will be ignored. If you'd like to get that rest, we have to change the type of the variables to not an integer anymore. It has to be like something real, okay? And we're gonna do that later. But if you want to get that rest, there's another operator, which is the percentage. So it works between two variables, and it returns the rest of an operation. So it will try to divide my var by my var2, and it'll get the rest. Okay? So if I try to print, that should print 1. That's 1. That's the rest. Now these are the basic operations that you can do on integer variables. Now let's delete this. And there's something else. So earlier we just declared my var int my var, and then we use the name of the variable equals something in order to put a value in that. We can just make a shortcut and put it here directly. So int my var, and then we give it a value just right away during the declaration. So my var equals 6, and then when I try to print, it works. It prints 6. So we declare a variable called my var, and then we put into that variable, that container, the value of 6.